All right. So today marks the 17th day. Good morning. Good morning. Today marks the 17th day of the seventh month. Today marks the 17th day of the seventh month in Genesis chapter 8, verse 4. Now, of course, on my calendar, it says it's October 8th, but that's not the real month. The real month of the ancient calendar, which is in the sky, which is the sun and the moon, the lunar solar calendar. According to that calendar, today is the 17th day of the seventh month, which in Latin, the word seven is September, like the month of September, right? What sept is seven. October is 8. So in the Roman calendar, it's October 8th. In the calendar, which is the ancient calendar in the sky, which is the sun and the moon, today is the 17th day of the seventh month. This is the day that Noah's Ark has landed on the mountains of Ararat. And so I found I found what I believe to be the correct etymology of the word Ararat, and I believe that is Ara is land, and Ratu, which is the water channels or water pipes or water system or irrigation system, has to do with water flowing through channels. Now, of course, the water flows down from the Caucasus territory, the mountains of Ararat, down into the Tigris and Euphrates River. So that would make sense. The other idea is that there were actual water channels and water systems in Hattusha, the Hittite kingdom of Hattusha. It's actually called Hattusha. It's called the Hittite people in the Bible. But they actually did have irrigation systems cut into the rock, which is pretty fascinating since they lived in highlands with rocks, and yet they had irrigation systems in the rocks. But it's whether it's literal or it's just a reference to the water channels, the flows of the rivers that go down through that territory and end up in the Mesopotamia. Both of those definitions appear to be the correct etymology for the term Ararat. Now, in previous videos, I've told you that Ar means light, and it does. And Ara also means a month, but it's actually in the Assyrian Akkadian, it's Arach. Arach. You got to put that at the end, right? So that would be light. No, it wouldn't be light, but that would be a month. Pardon me. A month is an Arach. Arach is a month. Ara is land. So that's where I got a little bit confused. And in the ancient language, an arach with a at the end, that's a month. Ara is land. So Ratu or Ararat is the land of the water systems. It's the land where the water's flowing through the channels. Okay, so now now in English we have a term called an era, which is a period of time. It's an era. So we don't use the at the end. We just call it an era. So an era is a period of time from the Assyrian arach, which means a month. And in the territory of Judea, it was called Yerach. So they use the term Yerach. They put a Yah in front of it instead of an R. They would put Yar, Yarach, Jericho, Yaracho. That's a month. That's a month. Yaracho is a month. It's a reference to the moon. Ach is moon, and Yar is light. So those terminologies that I gave you earlier does still work, but the where I got confused was the fact that an ara is land. So ara is land. So the Arameans, that gives me a new definition, because the Ara is the land, the men of the land, the people of the land, like the Aramaic people, the people of that territory. So anyway, now the last video I made, I told you that every Bible that is in existence today has a mistranslation. I believe, is it Genesis 7? that says that the flood begins in the second month. I believe it's Genesis 7. Let's see what it says. Flood begins second month. What's the chapter on that one? Chapter verse, because it doesn't begin in the second month. Just in case you're wondering, it says, okay, it says the great flood is described in the biblical book of Genesis began on the 17th day of the second month of Noah's 600th year, but it's not the second month, and today proves it, and I'll show you why. So now all Bibles in existence have translated this word incorrectly. So this is from what's the chapter and verse? Let me see if I can find it for you. Is 7:11. Okay. So it's Genesis chapter 7, verse 11. Every Bible that's ever been printed is wrong when it says that the flood begins in the second month. And I, of course, am the man who discovered that Noah's Ark is the sun. I'm the one that discovered that Noah's Ark is the sun. I'm the one that discovered that Noah's Ark in the sun. It was a couple of years ago now when I started this. I started this project to find out what is the original religion of the Israelites. And I actually didn't start it out looking for a calendar. My friend Jordan Maxwell used to talk about how the Bible's based on solar astrotheology, and it is. I found that interesting. But then when I'm like, well, how does that relate to some of these other stories like the flood and this? I wasn't really looking for it yet. The reason I was looking at Noah's Ark originally is because there's this big obvious thing that Noah didn't have a book. So if he didn't have, because people used to tell me the Bible is the word of God. And I'm like, okay, well, Noah didn't have a book though. So how did he have a perception of the infinite without a book, right? And so it's like, well, that's what led me into the story of Noah's Ark. But let's not go down that track too far. We're talking about Genesis 7:11. It said that Noah's Ark begins in the second month. Okay, so why did they use the word second there? And this is key. Defteros is the Greek word, and all the Bibles that exist in the world have been translated from the original Greek Septuagint, which was written in Egypt by the original Judean Israelites between 300 and 200 BC. There is no other translation. So when you hear of this thing called the Hebrew Bible, okay, they translated this thing called the Hebrew Bible from the Greek, and they translated it around 400 to 500 AD after the Roman period, right? It was way later. So the original Bible, because I have a copy of the Jewish Publication Society Tanakh. Everyone likes to use the Hebrew words, the Tanakh. It's not the Bible, it's the Tanakh. Okay, well, they got that from the original Greek. So, and in the original Greek, they use the word defteros, which does mean second, but it also means the following or the one that comes next, right? So in the original Greek Bible, in Genesis 7:11, it says, in the 600th year of the life of Noah, in the following month, right? Because the 600th year is the equinox. When it's talking about the 600th year of Noah, it's talking about the equinox, okay? And then the following month is the first month, not the second month. So defteros there means the following month, not the second month. Now, how do we know that's true? Let's make sure we know that that's true. So if I say today is October 8th, 2025, minus. Now, oh, here's the other thing I need to tell you before I do this calculation. The 150 days. So once the flood starts on the 17th day of the following month that follows the equinox, right? That's when it starts. Not the second month, but the following month. It rises up for 40 days, and then it's a total of 150 days before it stops. That happened about a week and a half ago. So about a week, almost 2 weeks ago, the flood stopped in the middle of the last month, which was the 6th month of the year, which is September something in our Roman calendar. I know it gets confusing because you've got 6s and 7s and 8s, and they're all kind of jumbled together, right? But about 2 weeks ago, the flood stopped. And then we've had this period of time where then we got a new moon, and then we got into a full moon, and now the ark has landed on the mountains of Ararat, or Ratu, the land of the irrigation channels. Okay. So when we do this calculation, I'm going to go from today back 150 days. And where's that going to put me? Even though it's not 150 days from today, it's actually 150 days from about 2 weeks ago. But let's try this calculation. October 8th, 2025 minus 150 days is what? Puts you at May 11th. 150 days before now today is 8 October. That would put you at May 11th, 2025. Okay. May 11th, 2025. Moon phase. It was a waxing gibbous. Let's look at it. Let's see what this looks like. Can't really see it. May 11th. I should go to, let me go to Moon Giant. Moon Giant. May 11th. May 2025. Let's see what it looks like. March, April, May. Moon Giant, May. Well, we're in March of 2020. Let's look at it. Okay, there's March. Then we'll skip ahead. April. We'll skip ahead. And then we're in May. Now, this would be 150 days from today. I'm just giving you an example. Okay, and then we go to May 11th. And we've got a full moon. But is this the second month? Would this be the second month of the calendar year? Let's look. I'm sorry, not of the calendar year, but of the holy year. Let's look. So if we go back there, we go to March, and the first month begins on the 29th to 30th of March, right? So that's month number 1. And then we go into April, and it starts, month number 2 begins on the 27th of April. And then we're in May, and we've got a full moon. The 11th. But the 11th is not the 17th day of the second month. It's the 17th, 16th. That's the 15th day of the second month. So that doesn't work. Now let's go back to, that's the 15th day of the second month. Oh, okay. Because what has to happen is the ark has to rise up and begin to move for 40 days. Then it has to go to a total of 150 days, and then it stops. And then on the 17th day of the 7th month, it lands on the mountains of Ararat. See, there's a time, there's a space there. So if we took it from today, the 17th day of the 7th month, and we took it back 150 days, it would put us in May. It would put the beginning of the ark, the flood, on the 15th day of the 2nd month. But it's not the 15th day of the 2nd month. It says in the Bible, it says the 17th day of the 2nd month, right? So it's not this day. So the calculation is off. Now, if you look at so if you actually translate Defteros properly, then it says the following month. Then where does that put us? Let's try that. So that would be the calculation I gave you before. But in a different video. Let me see what we got here. So if we said, okay, so when is the first month? The first month is starting right around there. Okay, so that would be April. Okay, let's see. Let's count the days here. Starting in March, we've got the 29th and 30th. So the 30th is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 is April 15th. So we say April 15th. April 15th, 2025 plus 150 days gives you September 12th of 2025. That's where we were in my last video. In my last video, that's where we were. It was right at about that time. So let's skip ahead to September 12th, 2025. June, July, August, September. Okay, September 12th, 2025 was basically the end of it. So September 12th, 2025 just puts us 150 days out from the beginning of the flood. Now so that puts us at the what's called the last quarter of the month before we get a new moon. Okay, so we got the last quarter of the 6th month. The 6th month of the lunar solar year was last 6th month. Okay, now we're in the 7th month. We're in the 7th month now, and we're now in the 17th day of the 7th month. I know you think it's October, but it's actually not. It's the 7th month. October means 8th. The 7th month. And so this gives us from the last quarter of last month about a week, and then we get a new moon, and then we get the new moon, then we get a full moon, which is where we're at now. So the calculations work with the translation of Defteros as the following month, but they don't work with Defteros as the 2nd month. It's not the 2nd month. It's the following month. So here's the interesting thing. So Noah's Ark, when we talk about Noah, the 600th year, Noah's year aligns with the equinox. The year of Noah aligns with the equinox. So the 600th year of Noah. That's the equinox. The following month, Defteros, is when the first month, which in the Bible, unfortunately, says the 2nd. So those calculations do work, because then that puts us about 2 weeks puts us about a week and a half away from the new moon. And then we get a new moon, and now we're in the 7th month. And the years in the ancient calendar are broken up into 2 halves. You have the spring summer half, the spring summer to autumn, and the autumn to midwinter and back into the beginning of spring. So you have two halves, which interestingly enough makes that kind of a, like you have the sun going down into the winter solstice and the sun going up into the winter solstice. So you have like a V up and a V down, which gives you that compass and square of like the Freemasonry, or it gives you that hexagram of whoever came up with that. The two seasons, and they come together forming one year. The dark and the light, right? The darkness and the light. The season of darkness, the season of light. The two adjoining seasons. So let's talk about a little bit of the etymology. We've got Ratu, which appears to mean Ara. In this case, means land. I know I've told you in other videos that Ara is a month, but it's actually Arach. Arach is a month. Ara is a land. Ara is a land, and Arach is a month. So that's the big difference. So Yar does mean light, and Ar does mean light, but it depends on the context. Now, there's some other interesting terminology here. I've got this. Let's take a look at this. The months. So the first month is called Nisanu. The second month is called Ajaru. Now, Ajaru. So interestingly enough, I do have some definitions for some of these terms, because one of the things I found interesting is you've got Nisanu as the first month, and then it's on both sides, it's got Ajaru and Adaru. And Ayaru is a reference to a god, actually. Reference to a god. Let me see if I can find his name for you real quick. Let's see. We've got, oh, here we go, the calendar year. So the 12th year, the 12th month, which is our March, like the last month from February into March, is called Adaru. Was dedicated to 7 great gods and was called by the Akkadians, okay, another name, sowing of seed. Okay, well, that's February, and then February into March is Adaru. Adar. Oh yeah, Adar. Who's Adar? Adar is an Assyrian deity of the thunderbolt and storm cloud. That's Adar. So he's like he's called the son of the south, and was also the deity power. Okay. So he's the god associated with power. What else do we have? So that's Adar. Now, Ayaru is the second month of the Assyrians, sacred to the deity Hia, also called Ea. It says here, Akkadian name Kar. Okay, that doesn't matter. The propitious bull. The associated bull, apparently. I don't know why. Let's take a look. Ayaru. Ayaru. I don't know why it's called that. Oh, because that's the bull. That is our Taurus. Is that right? Yeah, I believe that is right. That's Taurus, right? Yeah. Okay. So anyway, Ayaru is associated with Hia, or Ea, or Enki. And that's kind of interesting. So we've got, so here's the calendar of the ancient Mesopotamians. It's Nisanu, Ajaru, or Hayar, or Iya. Then Simanu, Deuzu, Abu, which is Leo, Ululu, and then Tasritu. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, Ululu is 6. Tasritu is the month we're in now. That's 7. Arach Samna means the month of Samna. I don't know what Samna means yet. I'm going to have to look it up. And then, so that would be 7, 8. Kislimu is 9. Tibetu is 10. Sabatu, Sabbath, is 11. And Adar, the sower of the seed month, is 12. Okay, so that's the old Mesopotamian calendar. And that's also the calendar used by the ancient Israelites and the people in that territory over there. So, interesting. So if you want to get some of this, if you want to find out what some of these words are, you can go to a really, really good dictionary I've found, and it's called an Archaic Dictionary by a man named, what's his name? Let me find out here. Really good dictionary. It's called an Archaic Dictionary by William Ricketts Cooper. William Ricketts Cooper. And while I'm here, let me point out, because I just went to this, I'm on Goodreads here on Google. You've got Ululu, the 6th month of the Assyrian calendar, it says, right? This is one of the entries. You've got Ul Zibu, of the wolf. Ul Tsaru, the enemy. In other words, you have Ul, or El, before the word, right? One of the things that dawned on me when I was reading this ancient or archaic dictionary is the use of the word El as in a sentence, right? This is like Latin. Notice how in Latin, El, like you got the words El Camino Real. Everyone's familiar with that. El Camino Real, the royal road, right? The King's Road that runs through California. El Camino. Well, that L is actually, it's Latin, and you'd go, oh, well, Latin, that's an Indo-Aryan language. True, and it's also an ancient, what they call Semitic language. So what is it? Is it Semitic or is it Aryan? And this is where I get into this terminology of what I call ancient English, is that these words got mixed around over thousands of years. So when von Schlosser came out and said, these are the Aryan languages and these are the Semitic languages. Well, that was a nice try, von Schlosser, but it's not that clear. I don't know that what Shem means is the sun. So there were some people that called the sun Shem, and there's some people that called the sun Sol, and there's some people that called the sun Ra. So, I mean, you know what I mean? And then it all just kind of changes around. So, but I found it interesting that I believe that the Akkadian, many of the words that we have in English and in German and in French and in Latin, a lot of them are Chaldean, a lot of them are Assyrian, some of them are not. You know, the Greeks use the word phos for light, and the Latins use the word luk. Does that mean that the Greeks and the Latins are not both speaking what you call, by von Schlosser's terminology, an Aryan language? Well, they both are, but one calls the light phos and one calls the light lus or luke. And and then another people call, you know, and then the Hebrew or the Canaanite races, the Phoenicians over there, whatever you want to call them, they call light Yar. Well, Yar is a year in German. You see what I mean? So these words get mixed up. So anyway, this is a really good dictionary. It's called an Archaic Dictionary by William Ricketts Cooper, who was he was kind of like me, actually. He's a guy that was got interested in Christianity. He was a missionary, And then he decided to go through and research Egyptology, and he just got really deep into the woods on these ancient dictionaries, which is important. The most important thing is to have access to all these ancient words so that you can have an understanding of the language, not only of your language, but other languages, so that you can be literate and understand what things mean, so that you can have a civilization and you can have some kind of orientation to your surroundings. If you notice the universities today, I could walk up to any, I could walk up to, let me put it this way. I discovered that Noah's Ark is the sun. Why? Because I'm literate. I can read. Now I can read the book and see what the message is from the book. I can read the book, right? I understand it, right? A lot of people read it, they don't understand it, and then they develop all these crazy ideas. But it's not just people that are reading the Bible that don't understand it and develop crazy ideas. It's people all over the world that are illiterate. They don't understand their surroundings. They don't understand language. They can't communicate well, and they can't build a civilization without language and symbols. That's why it's important to be literate. That's why it's important to have a store of knowledge of all these ancient languages, so that we can go back and find out what these symbols and words mean, so we understand them, and so that you can actually build a civilization of literate people that understand what things mean. I was going to say, I can go to any university person and ask them what some random words mean. Simple words you use every day, they don't know. I've asked a lot of people that are either Jewish or Christian or Muslim what words in the Bible mean that they use all the time and they don't know. This is why, if you're going to read the Bible, you should compare every word in the English and the German and the Latin and the Russian to the original Greek, and the Hebrew to the original Greek. Otherwise, your translation could be off, and it is, I believe. When you look at Genesis 7:11, it says the flood starts in the second month. Well, Deuteros does mean second, but it also means next or following. So the message I'm trying to communicate to you is that you should always double check. If you're going to read the Bible in German or so-called Hebrew that was invented in 400, 500 BC, you should check it against the original Greek. Check it against the original Greek. What does the original Greek translation say? Because that's the closest to the original. Why? Because taking a Greek word and then putting it into Google Translate works most of the time, but not all the time. I've shown that on my videos where I've taken a passage out of the Greek, put it into a Google Translate, and it adds a bunch of words that aren't there. When you're reading text, when you're reading an old text, and you put it into a Google Translate, it'll translate it into the common use of that particular paragraph. That doesn't work either. You want to know, what is the original word, how is it pronounced, and what are the meanings of that specific word without using common understandings. Just what does it mean? You know, that's why when I did the video on Isaiah and the word Lucifer, does the word Lucifer, so the word Lucifer is in the King James Bible in Isaiah, and it's in the Latin, and then you take the original Greek and you put it in a Google Translate, and it comes up with the word Lucifer and fallen angels, all this stuff. And then but if you just go word by word by word in the Greek, it doesn't say any of those things. It doesn't say Lucifer. It makes no mention. It's talking about the king of Babylon. It says that he fell from Uranus up in the sky because he was like a star. But it doesn't even say that. It's all poetic. So literally Google Translate will enter poetic sense and make up words that aren't there. And that's where they got that mistranslation of the word Lucifer. And now you have a bunch of people thinking that there's this thing called Lucifer, which would be something other than the word of God, which is the light. And there isn't anything else. I'll give you another example, because even though we're talking about Noah's Ark, I've been reading a lot, studying currently. I've been going back and studying the four Gospels, namely Mark and Matthew. And it's funny, people, including me, like to talk a lot about what the Bible is about and stuff without necessarily going and reading it. Now, I've been talking a lot about John and the Logos, and the Logos is the light, and the Logos is the Word of God. Not a book, but the Logos, which is reason, which is the parallel between Christianity and the Stoics. I've been going into that in great detail. But when you go back and you read Mark, it's quite a different take on the story. And so I'll give you. Oh, so what brought to mind was this word Satan, right? You got the word Satan, devils, demons, stuff like that. So in the story of Mark, the word Satan is used a couple times. Now, if you go to your average Christian, you go, "What is Satan? Is Satan a real thing?" And they'll go, "Yes, Satan is the king of evil, and he's a real thing, and he's a real person, and he's the enemy of God, and he's a real person." But that's not how it's used in Mark. That's not how it's used in the Bible. No, it means the enemy, someone who's opposing you. The word Satan in the Bible means anyone who's opposed to you. Now, who does Jesus call Satan? Who does he actually say, "Get thee behind me, Satan"? He says that to Peter, right? Is Peter Satan? No. Peter was saying, Peter was trying to say, "I don't want you to die. I don't want you to go through this horrible experience where you're going to be put on a cross and killed. I don't want you to be arrested and killed and crucified. You don't have to go through this." And he tells Peter, for not wanting him to be murdered, he tells Peter, "Get thee behind me, Satan," opponent. You're opposing me. You're opposing the fulfillment of the prophecy, right? He says that to Peter. Is it Peter who he says that to? I believe so. I believe he's talking to Peter. So the only person he calls Satan in the story is Peter. Is Peter Satan? No. So if you talk to a Christian, you go, what's Satan? What is that? Oh, that's the devil. No, it's not. It just means anyone who's opposed to you, your opponent. So at that point, because Peter didn't want Christ to be arrested and murdered, he was his opponent. He was opposing him. That's how the word's used. Now, a demon in the Gospels is a spirit that is a spirit that has like taken over a person's body and behavior and all that kind of stuff. So that's a different thing. So a demon in the Bible is an unclean spirit, and it's taken over the body and it's acting all crazy. According to the Bible, that's the story in the Bible. Okay. So anyway, this is why it's important to. And now, how many people go around talking about the devil and Satan without knowing what I just told you? I mean, if you just because it's one thing to hear the word and hear somebody else talking about something and then going on and believing in certain. Now you're developing all these beliefs, but then when you go back and you read it, it's not really used that way. You got to look at how it's used in the context, is what I'm trying to say. What does it actually mean? Is Satan a real being? No, he's not a real being that rules over souls in hell. No, Satan means opponent. Anyone who opposes you is for you, Satan. Right? So that's how that works. What else do I need to talk to you about? Oh, I know another thing I was thinking about was so one of the reasons I started this project originally was to find the original ideology, original belief system of the ancient Israelites, because you've got Christianity, then you have so you've got these different deviations. Islam is a deviation of Christianity. And you think, well, Christianity, that's a deviation of the original. Well, let's take a look. We had Judaism, right? Here's the idea of Christianity. Judaism, what it actually means is it's the religion of the rabbis. Judaism isn't the religion of all the people of Judea. In fact, some of them were pagans. Judaism is the religion of the rabbis, and it's a religion they got from. It started with Moses, and then it evolved into this other thing. Starting with Moses, evolved into this other thing of the rabbis coming up with their own ideas and laws and rules and regulations. And so that was the conflict between the Christians and the rabbis. I don't want to go into that too deeply, but that was a deviation from the original. The religion of the rabbis is not the original religion of Moses, because they created a lot of other things that were their traditions. And so that's their religion that they created, but it was created by men. It was created by the rabbis. That's the argument. Now you could say the Christian religion, it's almost entirely based on prophecy of Isaiah and Psalms and these other prophets, and it's about how they wrote these things into the Bible, and that this is the story of Jesus now is fulfilling the prophecy. Now, I personally believe that the story of Jesus is based on John the Baptist. So John the Baptist, I believe, was an historical figure who did all the things that Jesus is said to have done, but it was John the Baptist doing them. And it was John the Baptist that went out into the wilderness. And it was John the Baptist who everyone was coming to see. And it was John the Baptist who everyone believed was some great messenger. I believe that was all John the Baptist. And John the Baptist was killed by Herod and probably the people that were associated with him, like the Pharisees. So John the Baptist was the one that was opposing the Pharisees, and John the Baptist was the one that was opposing Herod, and John the Baptist was the one saying, "Prepare ye the way." And these are the John the Baptist group was totally obsessed with prophecy and bringing in this prophecy and bringing in the Messiah. It was all John the Baptist doing that. And so when you see Jesus goes and does this miracle and Jesus does that miracle, I believe that's a story of John the Baptist being told again as the Messiah, that he has come. I believe it's a story. And so, like for instance, with atheists, they'll say, "How did he get? There's no way you have magical things. You can't turn the loaves of bread and feed 4,000 people." Well, the loaves of bread aren't bread. See, in the story of the loaves of bread, it's not bread. It's the teaching. It's the doctrine. It's the message. It's the message. That's what the loaves of bread are. The loaves of bread are not bread. So every time you see Jesus and you've got these big multitudes, right? And there's no food. So he takes what little bread they have and he feeds everybody with the bread, because it's not bread, dummy, right? So the atheist doesn't know that this is what these terms are. So the atheist also has silly ideas about what the bread is. Now, if you walk up to a Christian and go, "Did he really give everyone bread?" Yes, it was real bread. See, they're just as illiterate. They don't know it's not real bread. In fact, he says it's not real bread in the book. If you read the book, he's like, "Why do you keep thinking I'm saying it's bread? I'm talking about the leaven, the teaching, the doctrine. The bread is the doctrine. That's the word. That's the manna from God. It's this doctrine. It's not actual bread. It's the teaching. You're living off this teaching that comes from God. It's called God's word, which is not a book. God's word is not a book. God's word is this knowledge and truth that comes from God through your soul, right? That's the bread. That's the bread. So anyway, whether it's the atheists or the Christians themselves, they're confused by this terminology. So, yeah. I want to say one last thing about Christianity before I go, which is I found something pretty remarkable about Christianity, which is the correlation between here's one more. Let me give you this one. The word Gentile. So I'm looking through the Bible and I'm comparing words. Like anytime I find a word which I find either kind of like what, or that's kind of strange word. Let's see what the Greeks called it. I'm finding that the word Gentile is just some blanket word that some idiot came up with to cover anyone who was not part of the religion of the Israelites. And it doesn't even make sense when you go back and read the book. There isn't this thing called Jews and Gentiles. There's Jews and the Greeks, and then there's Jews and the ethnos. So Gentile was like a word that's used to cover up the truth in the Bible. It's actually used to cover up or cover over and gloss over things. So in one of these, I don't have the exact verse, but here, Gentile in one term is used to cover up the word Hellenist. Oh, I remember. This comes from the story of Jesus and the Canaanite woman. So Jesus and the Canaanite woman, there's three versions. One, she's a Syro-Phoenician. She's a Greek Syro-Phoenician. In one, she's a Canaanite, and one, she's a Samaritan. And some people say, "Oh, it's such a racist story. He calls her a dog, and she calls herself a dog." Let me explain why it's used that way and what that really means. Well, first of all, because now I'm going on a different tack, but it's an important story that people are confused about. The reason why it's said that way is because she was not an Israelite, which means that her culture and people worshipped other gods. You see, she was coming to Jesus because her child was sick, but she was a person of a different tribe that worshipped other gods. She didn't worship the God. Their race didn't worship the God of Israel. Yet she came to the Word of God to be healed, to heal her family. Right? That's the meaning of the story. See, and it's told three different ways. She's a Canaanite woman. She's a Samaritan. She's this. She's that. According to the Israelite tradition, they worship other gods. But she comes to Jesus for healing, right? She wants some of those crumbs. That's what that means. But that's not what I was trying to tell you. What I was trying to tell you is that the word Gentile is a meaningless word because in the Bible, in this, for instance, in Mark, she's called Hellenist. She's a Hellenist, a Greek woman of Syro-Phoenician by race. So they use the word Gentile for Hellenist. Well, Hellenist doesn't mean Gentile. Hellenist means Greek. Specifically, it's the Greek people are the Hellenists. And then they use for the word ethnic or the race, they use the word Gentiles again in another verse. I believe this is from Matthew or something. In other words, go back and look at what the Greek word is because it's either being mistranslated often, it's being used incorrectly. Greek is Greek. Ethnic or race is an ethniso, an ethne, an ethnos. Those are the races. One of those races is Greeks. One of those races could be the Assyrians. In other words, they're different races. Why is that important? That's because that's being exact in your thinking. Calling everything Gentile is lazy, and it gives you a false understanding of the meaning of what's happening in the story. So here's another example of the word being mistranslated. Just like they translated Defteros into second, which it does mean second, it actually means the following. Just as in Mark, and I believe that was from Matthew, or maybe John or Luke, who knows, you have the word Gentile. Well, it's not Gentile. It's Hellenist, which is a Greek woman. Hellenis or Helen, Hellene, that's Greek. That's the Greek race. Ethnos is the races. So anyway, I think I'm going to end up on that. Today marks the day when the ark landed on Mount Ararat, and the Noah's Ark is the sun. And I'll update you with the next video at another time. Thanks a lot.